To the subject of history. And at the end of all that, my parents said, for God's sake, you can't do anything useful with history. So at least try and take the IIM examinations. And I wasn't terribly thrilled because I thought in those days the options after the IIM were to sell soap or detergent for some Hindustanized multinational. But to please them, I did take the exams, and because of this talent for exams, I came first in IIM Calcutta and second IIM Ahmedabad, the other way around, I can't remember. Those were the only two IIMs in the country. And fortunately for me, a scholarship came through to the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in the States, and I told my parents I want to go and study international relations. And they were in despair, what are you going to do with that now? But I said, look, I'll take the IFS examinations, and just in case I don't get the IFS, in those days you had to be in the top 10 in the country to get into the Foreign Service because that was considered the most desirable service. Now sadly they're scraping the bottom of the barrel. But in those days that was the most desirable service, largely because foreign travel was still very unusual and very rare and very expensive and so on. Foreign exchange was not available. So this business, the glamour attached to foreign services. But just in case I don't get it, I would have had a year's experience or 2 years experience studying in America. Why not go? So they said, fine, go. And I went. And obviously I've had no regrets ever since. But when you ask whether I was just merely this kind of obnoxious student who kept knowing all the answers, yes and no. I mean, that was certainly a major part of my academic life. But I tried to be a fun guy as well. So I helped revive the Woodhouse Society at St. Stephen's College, which amongst other things ran the university's most famous practical joke competition, the mimicry contest, the humor speech contest. I founded the Quiz Club of St. Stephen's, which is the oldest now quiz club of any campus of the country, 1974. I was a regular on the debating circuit and won lots of debates around the country. I acted in plays. I played Antony to Mira Nair's Cleopatra in my final year. Little realizing that Antony would come to mean something very different in my next political life. That's another matter. And I was elected president of the student body, the student union. So I had a very active college life. And during that time I was also writing a lot in the Indian media. So I can't say that I was just a nerd. I never was. I always had plenty of other things going. And I do believe that in college life you gain much more from extracurricular activities than you do in the classroom. Particularly, by the time you were in college, a lot of your studies had to be self-study. You really had to go out and go to libraries, dig up books, find out what you want to find out, and shape your own thoughts rather than merely regurgitating what a teacher tells you. I remember a friend of mine saying, that's not an original line, look, in school you learn to answer the questions, in college you have to question the answers. And I think that in many ways is my approach to higher education as well.
That makes sense. So we will definitely talk about your writing career, which is prolific. But before that, you've lived all over the world practically. How would you compare that to spending a lot of your time now in Toronto? And how would you compare the landscape in every sense, not just geographic, the landscape in Kerala to the rest of the world?
Well, one thing that has often bothered me about living in India, and I wrote about this in a column in the Hindu about 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, and to my surprise, the then left-front government of the state made that a compulsory reading in their English text. So it's there still, I think, for some years it was. When I came here to become a politician, they were rather appalled because I was their critic and they'd unwittingly given me a lot of goodwill by including one of my texts in the book. But I wrote about how one contrast that strikes you when you live abroad is the relative lack of civic consciousness in our society. And I wrote about it specifically in the context of cleanliness, that the average Indian will bathe twice a day in the summer, maintain a spick and span house, and make sure everything is clean, but will think nothing of throwing garbage on the streets, of littering stairways in the building, and spitting pan on the walls, all of these things. And it's just something flawed. We are incredibly proud and possessive of what is ours, including family. And our family bond, some would say, would be closer than in many Western societies. But we seem to be completely indifferent to the society in which we live and the well-being of it. It's always somebody else's problem. So if there's garbage on the streets, we will blame the civic corporation for not doing its work, but we will never quite internalize the importance of not littering in the first place. And somehow the fact that in 70 years after independence, and independence, by the way, preceded by Mahatma Gandhi saying sanitation is more important than independence, we still haven't been able to overcome. This is something which I'm quite dismayed by. I think we're really blessed by nature. I think we have some absolutely beautiful gifts of nature in every part of the country, certainly in Thiruvananthapuram. But I honestly think we have wrecked and ruined a lot of it through the ugliness of our constructions on it, through the irresponsible way in which we have run it. And the sad thing is that since independence, it's been a story of decline. When I came here as a candidate the first time, I was struck by something, and I said so to people. I had been to Thiruvananthapuram as a child for the first time around the age of 10 or so. We were living in Bombay, and we'd come for a holiday and stayed with some friends of my parents. And I remember there was this absolutely thunderous rain, massive monsoon shower, cascading down. And when it stopped, within 5 minutes, the streets were bone dry. And I turned in astonishment to my father saying, how on earth did this happen? Because in Bombay, with the rain like this, every street would have been knee-deep in water, and young men would have been standing on the sidewalks to make some extra money pushing cars. And that was what I'd grown up seeing in Bombay every day. I said, how on earth can Trivandrum be so different? My father said, look, it was the best planned city in the country, that the Maharajas have built every road with the latest, with those days the latest specifications of a gradient from the center so that the water will flow down to the sides. On the side of every road there is a drainage canal, and the water flows along the drainage canal to a larger canal which then takes it to the sea. So that's why the streets are so clean. I was very impressed, and I remember talking about Trivandrum to people whenever I witnessed street flooding. Then I come back, whatever it was, 40 years later, to be a candidate in the elections here. And sure enough, there is a big monsoon downpour, and I find Gullu Junction is like a swimming pool. So I started inquiring what happened here. This is not what Trivandrum was supposed to be. And of course I was told, well, the drains got all clogged up and covered over by encroachers, by construction, by road makers. So they're no longer drains. The roads themselves have been repaired over time by contractors who very much believe in the principle of built-in obsolescence, like computer manufacturers. It's often said that computers are made with the idea that within 3 years they should be out of date. And similarly, the roads are made so that within 3 monsoons they're unusable, and some contractor will again get money to make them again, and some person awarding the contract will no doubt get a cut to be able to make that happen. So everyone is part of the ecosystem that deliberately downgrades quality. And this to me was a rather rude shock and a rude awakening that we have somehow become lesser as a society rather than improving in quality. But then I realized that's also not totally true, because we get, in India everything gets better and worse at the same time. So we are producing institutions, buildings, vehicles, and people who are world class and which are world class. But while that's happening, we're also doing this kind of thing to make our daily life and experience so much worse.
So, coming to today, the fact that you're sitting with us, I must say this, especially in the context of this video that has been doing its rounds on this vocabulary quiz that you've been giving people.
It's such a waste of time.
No, we won't get into the quiz as such, but Till it actually happened, I was almost Panglossian in my hope that you would be sitting with us, but then here you are. Tell us, when you reached the campus and when you entered the building, what was your first impression of UST Global?
I was hugely impressed. And as Alexander knows, I've known UST Global since I first came there. And he invited me in my first year as an MP to come and address the assembled staff. I think there was slightly fewer people then, and then obviously a much smaller auditorium. It was actually not an auditorium, it was a workspace where everyone was lined up. And I remember I was standing the whole time, but I did address all your staff and take some interesting questions. And I've been back since. We had, I think you had a big annual conference where you invited, was it the former president of Mexico, I think, who had come along with me, and that was in a tent on the Technopark campus, which was, again, well attended, and I saw many of you there. And I have been very proud of the UST Global story, because in many ways it is a jewel of the Trivandrum experience. One of my desires as your MP has been to sell Trivandrum to others as well. I mean, I don't think you will suffer from competition. I think it'll simply add to the ecosystem here. I started a hashtag campaign called Move to Trivandrum. I don't know how many of you have used it, but it's not over. I'm going to periodically come up with Move to Trivandrum. And if I ran into somebody at a mall who had come here from some other part of the country and was loving it, I would make it a point to publicize that with the Move to Trivandrum hashtag. And of course, I've done my bit in speaking to a number of particularly tech companies. I do believe that tech is our biggest selling point. We have an extraordinarily good atmosphere for the kind of work that all of you are doing. We have a good environment. And by comparison with all the other places in India where competitive work or comparative work like this is being done, we have the least traffic or the most manageable traffic. We have the most reliable working conditions, and by far, I think, the most pleasant climate amongst all of these places. I still remember a story, and I'm afraid, Alexander, I can't remember if you told me the story or it was another CEO of another company, but before I came into Kerala politics, I had come visiting after leaving the UN. And to my astonishment, I found, I had just come to see it. I think I mentioned to Vijay Raghavan or somebody that I'll go and see the Technopark since I'd heard about it. And when I drove in, I was embarrassed and astonished to find banners welcoming me, and apparently all the CEOs of the Technopark had been roped in to meet me in the auditorium, and I had not actually expected that or prepared to say anything. So instead I turned the tables and asked them what their experiences were. And I learned a lot, which I won't waste your time on now unless you ask about it. But one of the stories I heard stuck with me. It was a great story. It was possibly Alexander Venkataraman, but a CEO of a tech company here said, well, here's a story about Trivandrum. We were in contention for a contract with a Dallas-based company. And that company had never heard of Thiruvananthapuram and said, well, we don't know anything about you. Was that your story, Alexander? Was it you? It was you. So you guys were in contention for a contract. And the chap said, never heard of Thiruvananthapuram, never heard of you. But anyway, since we're coming to India anyway, to inspect 5 other big companies we've heard of, we'll also come in and take a look at you. So Alexander said, didn't have very much hope, but said, fine, please come, we welcome you, etc. And these guys, these American executives, flew into India, and they went to Gurgaon, and they went to Pune, and they went to Mumbai, and they went to Hyderabad, I think it was, whatever. And they sat in the traffic, they sat in the sweltering heat, they heard the klaxons, they spent 3 hours, Bangalore obviously, I left out Bangalore. They spent 3 hours getting from point A to point B, or point A and a half. And then finally, at the end of all of these inspection visits, in more and more despair, they landed up in Trivandrum, they checked into a hotel by the beach, had a sort of cocktail at sundown, watching the sun go down, drove to Technopark within 20 minutes in the morning, went to UST Global, talked to the people there, saw the setup and said, hey, you've just gone from number 6 to number 1. You get the contract, because if we have to come, He wasn't praising UST, he was praising Trivandrum. He said, because they said, if we have to come to India even once a year to see how our project is getting along, we'd much rather come to Thiruvananthapuram than to any of these other places we've seen. And that story became part of my selling point when I spoke to other companies who were trying to move here. I made some headway with 3 or 4. I suppose my biggest success, I'm not sure if the success from their point of view, but from my point of view was when Oracle agreed to come after a video conference I led with the then director of the technical part. We are trying. We have challenges, and one of the challenges has to do with